Bring, bring, bring! Troubleshooting hotline, how can I help you? Oh no, we get questions like that all the time. Yeah, we're gonna do a video on that right now. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna go through the top 10 most common sewing machine problems. So that means if you're a beginner sewer and you've ever had a bunchy thread, we're gonna go through some of the troubleshooting that you can do. So let's get into it. So this is my fashion studio. My name is Faren. There's probably many issues that you're probably having, but this is a checklist that you can go through to understand what type of things that you could fix on your machine. If your machine is just bunching up and is getting stuck underneath the throat plate here, and your fabric is getting stuck, it's a possibility that your machine is threaded incorrectly. So, quick solution is take out your thread and take out your bobbin and rethread everything. It's a very good possibility that the thread came out of the uptake lever. The uptake lever is a mechanism on the machine that brings the thread down and then back up, and if it's not doing this function, then it's really going to be bunching up your fabric and going to be screwing everything up. If you want to know how to thread your machine, go to this video right here and I can show you exactly how to do that. Is your bobbin winded properly? In many cases, your bobbin is either winded too tightly or too loosely, or even just like really messed up. This is an example of a very badly wound bobbin. Throw that bobbin out and just rewind it. This is a very good example of a bobbin that is wound correctly. Do you have a dull needle? If you've been sewing for a really long time, they get dull. They also get bent. Even if it's a slight dent in the needle, it doesn't go down to the bobbin to pick it up properly. So this could be an issue that you might want to figure out. Which actually brings me to the next point. Do you have the right gauge of needle? Gauge meaning the number. There's different types of needles that you use for lighter fabrics and heavier fabric. This could also be an issue. If you're sewing a satin, for instance, and your needle is pulling the threads, you may want to check the needle gauge, changing it to a lower number 10, 11, maybe even a 12, depending on the thickness of your fabric. Another thing about needles, is it installed correctly? This is kind of a problem because if your needle is just down even slightly, it may be hitting the bobbin case and therefore denting your needle. So you have to make sure that your needle is all the way up the shaft and screwed in tightly. The needle on a domestic machine has a flat edge to it, so make sure that it's going in correctly. On an industrial machine, they're a little bit different. They have a specific way that these needles need to go in. If they are slightly turned, they do not work. They are very finicky. On an industrial machine, the little groove part needs to go onto the left side and the little scoop needs to go onto the right. You're threading your machine on an industrial from left to right. In a domestic machine, it's very simply front to back. Do I have the right thread thickness? And do I have the right thread, and is it coming out of the spool pin correctly? If you have a very thick thread, it's not going to go through your machine. You have to make other adjustments like changing your needle and fixing your bobbin thread and the tension. There's so many other things that goes along with changing your thread thickness. So ideally you want to use just an all-purpose. I have talked about thread and thread gauges in another video. If you want to go check that out, it's right here. So how it is set onto the spool pin makes a difference. If your thread is wound like a crisscross, then it needs to be horizontal. If it's stacked, then it has to be vertical. The weirdest little detail, but it really does help when the thread is coming off the spool. Next question, do I have the right presser foot? You know, this happens a lot that you want to do a zigzag stitch and you have the zipper foot in. No, sorry, that's not going to work. You're going to break a needle. So make sure that you have the right presser foot. As you can see, you cannot get very close to the zipper with a standard presser foot. Therefore, you have to change your presser foot to the zipper foot. This one gets very close to the edge of the zipper. This one does not. Next! Is your thread just breaking for no reason? What could that possibly be? My suggestion is to check underneath the throat plate. There is a very good possibility that you have tiny little threads that have been bunched and knotted in underneath your bobbin case and underneath the throat plate. Take out everything. All your thread, your bobbin case, everything, and clean under there. Lo and behold, you might find some very knotted, bunchy thread. Do you have the right stitch length? This is a thing, especially on domestic machines. Take, for instance, you were just stitching a buttonhole. Buttonholes, they require like a 1 or a 0 for a stitch length. And then you go back to your straight stitch and then all of a sudden you're like, well, why is my thread bunching up? Because your stitch length is set at a 0 or a 1 and it's just literally stitching in the same place. Check your stitch length. Here is another problem where your thread actually gets tangled around your thread guide. It shouldn't be like that. It should move and flow super easily through your machine. This is another thing. If your tension is too stiff, you need to loosen it. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, okay? Last and final would be the tension. I am no expert when it comes to tension, but there is a standard setting on a domestic machine. It has a little dot or a box or something that has been labeled, and you want to make sure that your tension is on that standard. This is a result of your bobbin being too tight. This is good tension. You can see that it is consistent on both sides here and on the back. If you have gone through all of that troubleshooting and you still haven't found the answer, please leave me a comment down below and I will try to help you. And for watching until the end, I have made a bonus free PDF linked in the description below. It's a list of all of the points that we went through today. Hopefully it can be helpful for you. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.